Over the summer, I got to do an internship with Bilfinger Industrial Services. Unlike the last presentation, this was very much old-fashioned. Everything, like I sat in a cubicle, I did design work. My superiors had no idea what I was doing, or well, they knew what I was doing, they didn't know how to do what I did. So it was very much an old-fashioned kind of work environment. So who am I? My name is Jake Rogers. I am from Jacksonville, Florida, and my internship was also there. Couldn't afford to stay here over the summer, so had to find something near home. Obviously attending the school here, I'm going for mechanical engineering and hopefully graduating in 2021. Cross my fingers. So I'm a former beach lifeguard and I lifeguard here at school too. I'm actually going to have to leave early today because I have a shift. And I'm also a competitor on the TV show BattleBots, and I was on last Friday for a little bit in the beginning credits, and I was on a few episodes throughout the season, and we'll be on once again with Team Mohawk September 7th, I believe. We're fighting the Dutch team. Can't say which one because it's a little hush-hush still, but it's a lot of fun. And I'm also part of the robotics club here at school. So my program overview. So basically, I did a lot of CAD learning modules. Basically, I had no CAD experience whatsoever. Like I said, I'm a mechanical engineer. So going into the world of like programming and design is kind of a little out of my comfort zone. But design is very important to engineering still. So I had to learn how to use that software. So from that, I was able to start drafting. And I had to learn how to study P&IDs, which are basically they're kind of rough sketches of what we want to get done, where this unit is, where these pipes are, that kind of thing, and just general measurements. And I take that and I make a more detailed drawing that's easier for an average person to read. So I did a lot of data entry as well. We had to take the amount of pipes that we needed. We had to make data sheets and basically purchase orders and things like that. I had to put those together. So just basic data entry. I had to learn how to. I knew how to use Excel, but that was really valued where I worked because most of my coworkers were 50 or older. So.
And then 50-year-olds don't know how to use Excel. What should you say?
The ones I worked with didn't. I went out and took field measurements. The people I did work with, their lack of skills with computer software, they more than made up for in their understanding of the field. I had people I was working with that were in the field for 35 plus years. So it was great working with them. Their knowledge was incredible of the field. So basically what we did, we worked with, we were given things to design, and we had to go out and take field measurements, and so I was brought along for a few of those. So along with that, we got to meet with the head engineers that worked with, that were with the companies we were working with. I got to talk to them, kind of form relationships, got to meet the bosses in charge of the places, so really learning what it's like to sit in on a meeting like that between the higher ups. It was really intimidating, but I just kind of sat back and I learned as much as I could. I learned a lot about like how to talk to someone at that level. My boss, he was very familiar with these people. He got to know them. He had a relationship with each one of them. I learned how important it was to go through and to meet everyone as they're moving up, because one day they could be the CEO of that company, and if you have a good relationship with them, it makes it a lot easier to make small talk and be relaxed and have a nice environment, because you and another company may have no difference between the two of you and what you can provide, but if you have that relationship with the person you're talking to, sometimes you can get a deal to work. So companies I worked with, mostly worked with Georgia Pacific. They had a plant in Palatka, And I also worked on a job with a plant out in Flint Hills. Flint Hills, so I was so compartmentalized that I didn't even know what company Flint Hills was. I didn't know what I was putting through those pipes. Like, so unlike, he talked about knowing every part of what he was doing, I kind of got to learn that in this specific job that I was in and the company that I was working for, that it was, since this is a large industry, I was very specialized to one specific thing. So I got to learn how to be really good at the one job that I did. And there was a certain level of communication that was required with my coworkers, but this was mostly just being able to be a powerhouse when it comes to design, pump out those designs, meet the deadlines, all that. So GP Palatka. We drove out there a few times. Since I was one of the, they never had an internship program in the specific branch that I was working for. They stuffed me in the back of one of their cars and we drove, 2.5 hours down to somewhere. The other interns up north were getting plane tickets and stuff, but I had to, work with my circumstances. But so we went out there and we took field measurements. We had, like I said, we had meetings with the engineers, and had to climb up a lot of things that, so I'm personally afraid of heights, and I had to climb up 85 feet of stairs with slats in them, so looking straight down and seeing the ground was a little freaky, but you kind of get over it, you realize this is a job, this is what you have to do. So by the end of the day, I was, taking my lunch break out on the edge of this platform, and I was totally used to it, so kind of got to learn what an industrial facility is like, and got to meet a lot of the employees there. And then, like I said, a lot of the top engineers, and then along with just regular hand measurements with measuring tape or whatever, we went through with a 3D scan, and so we took 3D scans of the entire inside of the building, and we had this cloud file that we were able to access, and you're able to move through a 3D environment of where you're working. So it was really easy to, for the 3D designers who were kind of newer to this company, they're still introducing this technology and trying to catch up. They were able to just kind of snap all these images together and then place, instead of having to sit there and take measurements, they could snap piping or different things right into the image that they had. So it saved a lot of time. And then I did basic data entry for the parts that ran for this. So Flint Hills, basically for this was what I spent about 95% of my time working on. This was just sitting at my desk in my little cubicle, drafting and working away. I had to plan out what I was going to do, because sometimes we were given all the information and sometimes we weren't given all the information. We had to take certain design liberties and guesstimate off of pictures how large certain things were, and then as we would receive the new information from the spec sheets, we were able to more clearly define exactly the size of the fittings and all of that kind of thing. So I had to look over P&IDs, because basically this is like a framework kind of for what I was doing. So I kind of fleshed these things out and made them easier to see for the average person, whereas it pretty much takes an engineer and a trained eye to understand some of these P&IDs, but once you design all this, it's a lot easier to see and understand. So I went over, like I said, we went over a lot of spec sheets, kept defining different variables and getting everything to the correct sizes, so that once it got there, everything was exactly how it was on the sheets. So this is some of the work that I did for Flint Hills. So I had to learn how to do different section cuts, and then I did an overview. This is just for, this was the portion that we were working on. We had chiller units right here, and we had heat exchangers, which were mentioned earlier on. These were larger industrial heat exchangers, and filters. And so all of those I was given kind of a very basic drawing or just pictures of, and I had to take some liberties there are a few notes that were left by people who took field measurements. Because I was not able to visit this facility myself, but from my fellow employees, they gave me the measurements and I was able to draw out everything. So I learned that when you're working with 2D CAD, which I knew nothing about and was able to draw all this by the end of the summer, that you have to take section cuts so that you can see elevation. So I had plenty of section cuts to show elevation. Those are just a few of the examples. And then as things, you had a few liberties. So this design changed about 27 times throughout the time I was working there. Boss would come in and say, hey, there's some standards. You have to have 30 inches of clearance between these two things. So I have to go through and move everything around. But that's just the nature of what my job was. So the programs I used Autodesk by AutoCAD and obviously Excel. So and my company did have a subscription to Autodesk's. We had a CAD learning software that I spent a lot of time going through. I watched over 700 videos on how to use 2D software, and there were thousands more about three-dimensional software, drafting software, which I kind of scratched the surface of when we got low on work. So I was able to kind of branch out from something and learn a little bit more because they're moving into the 3D space more now. So basically, just an overview of what I learned. Learned how to use AutoCAD. I learned how to read those tricky PNIDs and how to make something of those. I learned how to make PNIDs. So once we were given a general idea of what we needed, I was able to draw a PNID. I learned how to drum up potential business with clients and sitting in with my boss and talking to. There was a hallway of the engineers, and he'd knock on the door and walk in, and he'd be like, "Hey, Steve, you need any work, coming up?" And he'd, keep going on down the hall and be like, "Hey, Cindy, you need this, you need that." So it was really nice. I got to see the old-fashioned way of doing things, getting to know people in person, shaking their hand, telling them how, asking them how the kids are, or whatever. So got to see how that works and see how to form relationships with the people that you're working with, professional relationships, and definitely do a great job of drumming up more business and keeping the company afloat. That's about it. Overall, a lot of people come up here and they'll say, this is exactly what I want to do. This is, excellent. And I found out this is not at all what I want to do. But that's okay, because that's what an internship's for. You can do, you're not limited to just one, even though we're only required one. I learned that I thought before that I could sit behind a desk and I could design things for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I'd be perfectly fine with that. And it turns out I'm not okay with that. I'm a very social person, and I thrive off of that energy I get off of other people. So I found that either I'm going to need to kind of be mentored into drumming up business with these clients. I had an easy time talking to people that were high ups. It was that was more my speed. And then maybe find something maybe not so different from what I was doing, but something that I was personally more interested in. I like I said, I'm in robotics, so that kind of thing interests me a lot more. There's some people who don't necessarily have strong social skills, but have great design skills. Like the people I worked with, they're fantastic people, did a great job. They love where they work. So I think that was a really important lesson that I learned this summer, and finding really where I wanted to work, and it really opened my mind to so many more jobs that so many more careers I could pursue. So, any questions?
This was your first internship?
Yes, this is my first internship. I'm a returning student. I'm a sophomore this year, and I just wanted to get it out of the way. It paid really well, so right now I'm paying for school myself, so all of what I earned this summer, the 40 hours a week, 13 weeks, went right back into the school. So it was an opportunity that I didn't have the chance to pass up. So, and I was glad I didn't, because I learned so much about what kind of work environment I would like to work in, and which one I wouldn't necessarily think is a good fit for myself. And I remember at first when my boss was saying some things about, maybe this isn't a good fit for you. Normally when you hear that, you're worried, like, did I not do a good job or whatever? And then he explained to me, he was like, no, I don't think this is a good fit for you because you seem like a very social person, and you seem like you could get very, stir crazy in a cubicle. So I totally agreed with him, and I calmed down a lot after he said that, and he complimented some of the work I did, and gave me useful tips on like some of how I met certain people, what level of formality I need to have when speaking to certain people. I mean, sometimes you'll bump into someone and you don't realize that they're the CEO of the company, or that they're in charge of the entire branch. And you have to learn how to gauge that, and there's a lot of kind of like I don't want to say conversational minefield that you have to navigate, but if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you could kind of not help yourself there. So and saying the right things to the right people, could throw off on the business. So I learned a ton about that. So any other questions? Yeah.
How would you suggest someone approach trying to get into an internship, trying to find an internship that would, benefit them and would suit their interests?
So I would suggest just when I'd say having a good relationship with people who are in the workforce right now, like just of the age that they are in the workforce, is a great thing. Just ask around. I know. Like, I have a good relationship with my parents because I work hard at that. I love my parents a lot. And friends of theirs would approach them and be like, hey, Jacob's a good kid. Would he be interested in working here? And, I'd follow up with that instead of just being like, oh, that would be cool, So I reach out to those people, call them. Personally, it was through my church. It was another member of the church. But if you have any other social group that you're involved with, like a sports team, or you have a group of friends that you go get dinner with every once in a while, I just ask around. And it's not something that comes up a lot, and I think a lot of people appreciate it when you ask them about their occupations, because not a lot of people take the time and interest in that. So I just ask them about their jobs, and then what they do, and if it applies to what you're doing, maybe just be a bit inquisitive about that. On top of that, I know there's a lot of great resources here. There's I believe an internship fair kind of thing, where you get to meet people who have interned at, or worked at different companies. So I also attend that as well. I attended that last time around, and I got to meet some great people. And just after they're done speaking, make sure that you get their contact information, and hopefully, had a good enough a good conversation with them to where they'd be like, when you call them up, they're like, oh hey, so and so, I remember you from this, and then just start a conversation. Really is the number one most important thing. A lot of people don't talk about each other's jobs much because you're there all day, but just take an interest in people's occupations, and from there, that's what happened with mine. It just it sparked from there. So it wasn't really it wasn't through Poly, but Poly does offer a lot of options for that as well. So even not necessarily in the school, but throughout the state. So I would use those resources as well. Any others? I'm good. Thank you.